I thought it was a Christian haunted house. It was a ritual sacrifice. I've told this story 3 times in my life. The first time, I called it a panic attack. The second time, I said it was a bad trip. This is the first time I'm telling the truth. My hometown is one of those places you fall into and never climb out of. A pothole on the highway of American progress. By the time I came around, all the good jobs had bled out, leaving the hollowed-out mills staring at the sky with shattered glass eyes. What grew in their place were churches. So many fucking churches. They shot up like weeds from the cracked pavement, each one promising a way out that only led back to the same place. Growing up there, you didn't choose God. He was just the air you breathed, stale and thick with judgment. I started holding my breath in my early teens. I didn't have a big rebellion, no dramatic falling out. It was more like a slow leak. And in a town that small, a leak is a flood. People notice everything. They notice when you stop showing up for the potluck, when your hair gets a little too long, when your eyes don't glaze over with the proper amount of piety during the sermon. Their kids notice too. Power is a drug, even when the only kingdom you have to rule is the high school hallway. Every church had a youth group, but the biggest, the one that really mattered, was at Calvary Cross. They called themselves the Fold. A good pastoral name for a group that operated more like a pack of wolves. They had this prayer circle before first bell, a human chain so thick you had to scrape your back along the lockers to get by. They'd sing hymns around the flagpole, their voices thin and reedy in the cold morning air. They were God's little soldiers, and they saw my drifting away as a desertion. Keon was one of them. He was also the only decent drummer in a 50-mile radius, which is why he was in my band. He was my best friend. He started chipping away at me, gentle at first. Little invites. You should come to the Fold, Nico. We're not all freaks, I promise. I always had an excuse. Work, practice, a headache. But he was persistent. He knew how to find the cracks. Look, forget the regular meetings, he said one afternoon in my garage, tapping a restless beat on his snare. But you gotta come to this one thing. Every October we go to this hell house out by the old cannery. It's insane. Like a real horror movie. A Christian haunted house? I scoffed, tuning my guitar. What's the big scare? A room full of premarital hand-holding? He laughed, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Nah, man, it's legit. It's not about celebrating evil, it's about confronting it. It's intense. You'll like it. A real haunted house. The only one we used to have got shut down for being a fire trap. I was bored. I was 16. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? So I said yes. That Friday night, the air had the sharp bite of impending winter. A fat, bleached white moon hung in the sky, looking down on the parking lot of Calvary Cross. We all piled into a long, white church van that smelled of old vinyl, stale donuts, and Axe body spray. For the first 20 minutes, it was almost normal. We talked about bands, about school, about nothing. I started to relax. I saw the appeal. It was a place to belong. Then the chaperones up front started a song. The shatter died instantly. And everyone, Kian and this girl Adarin next to me included, joined in. Their eyes closed, their bodies swayed in unison with the lurching of the van. I didn't know the words, so I just closed my eyes too, moving my lips and hoping the driver, who kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, would buy it. The melody was simple, like a nursery rhyme, but the words crawled under my skin. The soil is dry, the well is deep, our thirsty God has promises to keep. We offer up the blood we take, for the holy ground, for heaven's sake. The ground is cracked, the roots are weak, our thirsty God, it's him we seek. I get a cold sweat just typing that out. It went on, the same verses over and over, getting a little louder, a little more desperate each time. My brief feeling of comfort was gone, replaced by the familiar prickle of being an outsider, of being prey. The singing finally stopped when we turned off the paved road onto a gravel path that rattled the whole van. We drove under a rotting wooden archway with 2 words, spray-painted in red Hell's Gate. Beyond it, the skeletal remains of the old canning factory clawed at the night sky. Adrenaline, sharp and electric, cut through my unease. Kian and Adarin were practically buzzing with excitement, their faces lit up by the sickly yellow security lights. As we shuffled out of the van and into the cold, I let their energy infect me. It was just a show. Just a bunch of church kids in rubber masks. A guy in a cheap devil costume with a plastic pitchfork greeted us. More souls for the fire? Welcome, you wretched things. Step inside and witness the wages of your sin. They split us into groups of 3 at the door. It was me, Kian, and Adarin. We pushed through a heavy curtain of black plastic into the first room. The first few scenes were what you'd expect. A kid convulsing in front of a TV playing video games while a demon poured fake blood in his ear. A girl getting an abortion on a dirty table while monsters in doctor's coats laughed. It was offensive and stupid, but it was just schlock. The acting was terrible, the props were cheap. I started to relax again. But with each room, the tone shifted. The actors got more aggressive. The scenes became less about sin and more about punishment. A room depicting a car crash, the air thick with the smell of burnt rubber and something metallic. The actors playing the dead teenagers weren't wearing masks. They were just lying there, pale and still, their eyes wide open. In the next room, an actor was being waterboarded on a tilted cross. It felt too real. Adarin was clinging to Kian's arm, her knuckles white. Even Kian had stopped smiling. The last room was at the end of a long, dark service corridor. The concrete floor was uneven and slick with something I didn't want to identify. I kept a hand on the cold, damp wall to stay upright. Ahead, a single blue neon light flickered above a set of heavy steel doors. It read, "The Well." I figured this must be the redemption part. A palate cleanser. Maybe a guy dressed as Jesus handing out pamphlets. I was wrong. I was so fucking wrong. We pushed the doors open and stepped inside. It was a huge, circular chamber. The main processing room from the cannery days, I guess. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and damp earth. In the center of the room, the rest of the fold stood in a tight circle, their backs to us. They were completely silent. As we approached, they parted, creating a path for us. There was a sound, a low, wet whimpering that seemed to come from the floor itself. That's when I saw it. In the middle of their circle was a heavy iron cistern, like a lid for a well, set flush with the concrete. The whimpering was coming from inside. One of the chaperones, a man with a bland, forgettable face, knelt and turned a large iron wheel on its surface. With a great, groaning screech, the cistern lid slid open. The thing they pulled out wasn't human. It was pale, the color of spoiled milk, and its skin was thin, almost translucent. You could see dark, sluggish veins pulsing beneath the surface. Its limbs were too long, with too many joints, bending at angles that made my stomach churn. It had no hair, no ears, just a smooth, featureless face, except for 2 enormous liquid gold eyes that blinked slowly, painfully in the harsh light. It kept making that horrible broken sound as they laid it on the floor. My brain was screaming special effects. Special effects, it's an actor in a suit, but my body knew better. The air grew heavy, thick with a pressure that made it hard to breathe. The chaperone produced a knife. It wasn't a prop. It was a hunting knife with a gut hook, the silver blade catching the blue light. He held it up. "The thirsty god drinks deep tonight," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. He plunged the knife into the creature's slender torso. It didn't scream. It just made a high, whistling sound that vibrated in my teeth. The blood that welled up wasn't red. It was black. Thick and oily, like crude oil. The chaperone handed the knife to Kian, my best friend. He took it without hesitating. His hand was steady. He looked at me, just for a second. There was nothing behind his eyes. No fear, no excitement. Nothing. "We drink from the well," he whispered and stabbed the creature. Then he knelt down, put his lips to the wound, and drank. Adarin went next. Then the others, one by one, passing the knife, opening a new wound, kneeling to drink the black blood that flowed from the pale, twitching thing on the floor. As each one stood up, their faces were transformed. The pupils of their eyes bled out, eclipsing the color until they were just glossy black orbs. Their faces were slack, serene. A low hum started, a single resonant note that grew until the whole room thrummed with it. The ground is cracked, the well is deep. The ground is cracked, the well is deep. The ground is cracked, the well is deep. My legs were already moving before my brain caught up. I turned and ran. Back down the slick, dark corridor. I slammed into the steel door, fumbled it open, and burst out into the main part of the haunt. I shoved past a demon actor who just stared at me with his mouth open. I found a fire exit, smashed the bar with my shoulder, and fell out into the piercing cold of the night. And I ran. I ran until my lungs felt like they were full of broken glass. I stumbled through a dry creek bed, tore my jeans on branches in a skeletal forest, never once looking back. I finally broke through the tree line into a massive, harvested cornfield. In the distance, I could see the lights of a gas station. I made it there, locked myself in the grimy bathroom, and threw up until there was nothing left. I called my dad, told him I got separated from the group and that my phone was dead, a lie so flimsy I was shocked when he believed it. The next few days at school were a special kind of hell. I expected, I don't know. Accusations, threats. But it was worse. It was silence. The fold moved through the halls as one. Their prayer circles were bigger, louder. Their faith wasn't just aggressive anymore, it was predatory. Sometimes I'd catch them watching me. 2 or 3 of them, standing perfectly still at the far end of the parking lot, their heads tilted in unison, just watching. Keon never came back to band practice. I saw him one last time, a week later. He was across the cafeteria, sitting with the others. He looked up and his eyes met mine. They were still wrong. The color was washed out, faded like an old photograph. He smiled at me, a slow, knowing, terrible smile. I finished high school. I got out. I moved 1,000 miles away and never looked back. For years, I told myself it was a prank, a shared hallucination, anything but the truth. Because the truth raises a question that has kept me awake more nights than I can count. They had this thing. This celestial thing, or whatever the fuck it was. A being they clearly saw as divine, as a source of power. So why? Why the cage? Why the pain? Why treat it like an animal in a slaughterhouse? I think I know the answer now. You don't worship your cattle. You don't pray to a spring you draw water from. They weren't torturing it. They were farming it. Before I ran out of that room, one of them, Adarin, I think, tried to grab my arm. She pressed something into my hand, a small folded piece of paper. In my panic, I shoved it into my pocket and forgot about it until years later. I still have it. I've never opened it. They think I saw what they wanted me to see. They think I'm one of them now, just biding my time, waiting to come home. And the scariest fucking part is, after all these years of running, some small, dark part of me still wonders what it tastes like. Some nights, I still feel so damn thirsty.